Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Atomic Game Dev. My name is Will, and I'm here with my first Unity tutorial series. So for this series, we're going to make a very simple game. As you can see, I recreated Pong within Unity, and nothing too complicated here. We've got an enemy AI that we're going to create, a scoreboard, and then sort of a start game menu, also handling the end of the game, and really just doing some sort of basic work. I'm going to go over the Unity editor and some basics in scripting as well. That being said, this tutorial series is targeted at beginners, so people who really don't have a lot of experience or any experience using Unity at all. So I'm hoping to start off with this. It won't be too long of a series, but once it's finished, then I can move on to some more complicated and cooler topics, specifically in Unity 2D for now, but I might move on to making some 3D videos in the future as well. So let's just get right ahead into it. What I'm going to do is create a new project, and the only thing you have to do is check the 2D box, since we'll be creating this game in Unity 2D. And I'm going to quickly skip ahead while the game assets load, and then we can get started. Alright, so now I'm back on the project screen here, as you can see, and I want to quickly walk through everything you kind of need to know to get started within the editor. So as you can see, this is your scene, and this is kind of where you can visualize and move around all of your objects, sort of set up the map and locations of things. And then if you go over here, you go to the game, which is what you see upon actually playing. So right now it is just a blank blue screen, and that is because our only game object is the main camera, which is automatically set for you. So in most games, you actually have to work with the camera a little bit to get it to do what you want, say, following the player around, or really just giving sometimes the player the ability to move the camera around. For our instance, we actually don't need to do anything with the camera. We can leave it as is because we are sort of working on a just simple screen. But what I would like to do is change the background color to a black so that we can sort of make a cooler design here. 1 second. Move the color into the screen and just change it here, and we will save that. And so now you can see it changed the game screen, to all black. And yeah, so as you can see over here, where I was just working with is the inspector, which is where we have basic things that you can change. So the main camera is a game object here, which has 3 different objects in it. So we don't need to worry too much about these over here right now. The one important object that we're going to be working with a lot is transform, which just stores the position of the game object. And that being said, we're actually going to create our own object now. And we are going to go to 2D object and sprite, which is really just an image within. Oh, we do not want that to be part. And a sprite is really just an image within it. We're going to customize this a lot to get it to do what we want, and this is actually going to be the PlayerPaddle. So down here you can see we have our project scene. So we have our folders, and in that right now we have art and we have scenes. So I put art in, which is where I also put in the simple assets that I need for the game. And scenes are basically like your levels. So right now we're working in one scene. It's named sample scene. I'm going to change that to main game. And the only other scene we're going to end up making is one for the main menu. But in a sort of more complicated game where you have a lot of levels, you might actually be putting together a lot of different scenes, and you sort of view your scene within here. We are also going to change the name of this sprite to PlayerPaddle. And in the description, I've actually linked the final project in GitHub, which has all of the art assets I'm using. They're obviously very basic, and you could definitely make your own, and I would recommend, making your own. However, if you would like to follow along and just use the ones that I've made, then you are totally welcome to go ahead and do that. So now we have each sprite comes with a sprite render object, which really just shows, what it is, how you're displaying it, and we're going to drag this here. And now we can see it is being automatically placed in the center of the screen. It is, however, not visible, and that is because, as you can see here, the Z is -10. So if we change that to 0, now we can see this. Cool. And we also want to move it over. So I'm going to go over to the X value here. And I'm going to make this, say, -19. Is that it's too far. We're actually going to go to -10. That looks about right. And now you see we sort of have this where we want over in the corner. So what we need is we need this paddle to kind of, right now it's sort of set up as if it were just like a background image. We need it to actually partake in the physics of the world. So for that, what we need is a component called a rigidbody 2D, which is really important. And this is what allows sort of the object to interact with gravity, to kind of move around. And as you can see, it has right now a gravity scale of 1 and a mass of 1. So when we play the game here, what you're going to see is that the object is going to fall down. Boom. And we don't want that to happen. We do not want our object to interact with gravity, obviously, because we want it only to move when the player tells it to. So I'm going to set the gravity scale to 0 here. One other thing I'm going to do, if you go to constraints, I'm going to freeze its position in the z-axis, and I am also going to freeze its rotation in the z-axis because we never want it to rotate. We always want it to stay straight. I'm also going to freeze its position in the x-axis because we only want it moving up and down. And now to get it to move, we are going to have to write some code. So I'm going to first create a new folder, and I'm just going to call this scripts. And then I'm going to go in that folder, and I'm going to create a new C# script called paddle movement. Awesome. And so I'm using Visual Studio as my editor. You can see here, you're free to use whatever you'd like. I like Visual Studio. It has some great built-in tools with Unity. So I want to run you through what's going on here quickly first. Don't worry too much about these. This obviously is getting access to the Unity engine and then its extensive API. Similarly, don't worry too much about this for now, but these are extremely important methods right here. So start will be called upon sort of right before the script runs. So right before anything happens, the start method is running. And then the update method, as it says here, this gets called once per frame right after the first start. So start will be called, and then update will be running once per frame, as it says here. And this is where you want to pretty much handle things like input or anything that you constantly need to check for. So for example, we're going to be using update in this script to check for player input. So yeah, I'm going to get started, and first I like to start off with the methods, the variables that I want to be using within the script. And the first two things we need to figure out what is our up button going to be and what is our down button going to be. So for that, I'm going to do public key code, and I'm going to say up. And I'm going to go here and say public key code down. Okay. It doesn't need all caps. Down. So the reason I'm setting these is so that we can change them, and because we've set it to public, we're actually able to change that within the Unity editor. So if we go down, we need to add the script we created to our paddle. Alright, so you see it here, we can see the up and down variables, and so we're going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to use W for up, and then S for down, pretty basic commands there. You can change this, make it whatever you want. That's the reason for kind of making it public and giving us the ability to edit it here. So the next thing that we need is to get access to the rigid body that we were just messing around with so that we can change the velocity when we need to. So we're going to set, and I'm actually going to make it private, rigid body 2D, rigid body, and then in the start method we can access that pretty easily by just doing get component, which will reference a component within the object we're in. So right now we're in the PlayerPaddle object and we want access to rigid body 2D. So calling the get component method will allow us to do that. So now we'll have access to this within our script. And the last thing we're going to need is going to be the speed, which is going to be a float. There we go. So what we're going to need to do is we are going to need to check for player input, which Unity makes it extremely easy to do. All we have to do is input.getKey, and then we can here go up. So this right here handles player pressing up key. And then here we can also set it up for down. Awesome. Player presses down key. And what we need to do is we need to get access to the current velocity of the player every update. And if the player is currently pressing up, we will make it sort of up relative to the speed. Same thing if it is down. So we can do this here by creating a vector 2, which really just creates a base vector with an x and a y value. And we're just going to call it velocity gets rigid body velocity. So we have the current velocity. If the player presses up, what we're going to do is we're going to set the y value of the velocity to be equal to the speed. And then similarly, if they press down, we're going to make it equal to negative speed. Then we're going to reset the value to be equal to the current velocity of the rigid body. Velocity gets velocity here. And so we sort of have these two variables here. The main problem right now is that it's actually going to be set up so that it'll keep going up even if you don't press up, or keep going down. So I'm actually going to change the structure of this to be an else if v so that we can also handle when the player does nothing, because when the player does nothing, we don't want them to move. So we'll actually just do velocity gets vector 2 0, which is really just 0 0 vector. It won't move at all. And then we're setting this here to be equal to the velocity. So let's give this a run and see how it does. We still have more work to do, but the first thing we're going to want to do is set the speed over in the inspector. So let's give that a second to load, and then start off with 8. And then we're going to hit play here. And as you can see, our paddle is moving up and down. So there's no constraint, and so we're going to start working on the constraints and the boundary in the next video. Thank you for watching, and if you're interested in following the rest of this series, please subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.